Begin the current Daf Mesechta Chagigah Daf Gimel. Begin 4 lines down at the top of the Yommi. We were in the middle of a discussion over here regarding the halachas of who is mechuyev in Re'iyah. Our Mishnah had said, opening up this practice, Mesechta Hakol Chayav Re'iyah, everyone is obligated in the mitzvah of Re'iyah. We said except for Chesed v'Katan. And in our Gemara we qualified that although it says Chutz mi Cheresh, we had two actually, the Gemara said actually Chesur Mechsra. It's actually like words missing, and there's two different halachas being mentioned in our Mishnah. He said that Cheresh is exempt from the mitzvah of Re'iyah, even if he's one type of Cheresh, meaning he's only missing hearing or he's missing just speech. But then, when we're comparing him to Sheit v'Katan, that they're La B'nai Dein, and that's exempting him from the mitzvah of Simcha, because for Simcha, they're not mechuyev in any mitzvahs. And now our Gemara is going to discuss then why is the mitzvah of Re'iyah different than the mitzvah of Simcha, that you're going to exempt the Cheresh even if he's not just Shemei v'en Medaber, even if it's just missing one and not the other. Just corresponds to anytime the Achem Bishop is joining for today's Daf. Something that's discussed in today's Daf are Re'iyah, again the mitzvah of the Lila, regular opening mitzvah of this Masechta regarding coming to the Beis Hamikdash on the Shalosh Regalim, 3 Yom Tovim of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. And those are exempt, including, like we said, Cheresh Medaber ben Shemei or Shemei ben Medaber, someone who's either deaf or mute, or Cheresh Ba'aznei Achas, the Gemara is going to discuss if someone's deaf in one ear, or Chagigah B'Ragel Achas, or if he's lame in one foot, would also exempt him. We discussed the mitzvah of Hakel for all of Klal Yisrael together in the Beis Hamikdash after every 7 years. Divrei Torah, several drashas explaining the greatness of Torah and the Talmid Chachamim, and Aman Moed Ma'asr Meiser Ani B'Shviyas, that they have to separate Meiser Ani, which is given to the poor, from produce grown in Shemitah in the Eba HaYarden, which they were not Mekadosh when they came back for the second Beis Hamikdash. And these are Shaita qualifications of what we consider and be indicative of someone having signs of insanity. So begin the current Daf Gimel, 4 lines down at the top of the Yommi. So we're in the middle of it, like we said, a Gemara's discussion with regard to the Cheresh, if he's Medaber ben Shemei or Shemei ben Medaber, that is exempt from the mitzvah of Re'iyah. Says the Gemara, Maishno in Re'iyah, the Betiri, what's the difference regarding the mitzvah of the Re'iyah? Which again, Rashi places whether that means to say actually appearing in the Azar or bringing the carbon Eilis Re'iyah. But you're telling me that any type of a Cheresh, if he's just missing one faculty of either speech or hearing, is exempt. Why for Simcha's Yomtiv, for the Shalmei Simcha, do you hold that he's going to be mechuyev until he's missing both what we call a deaf mute? He's missing his faculty of hearing and of speech. Says Gemara, I'll tell you why. Le'in Re'iyah, regarding the mitzvah of appearing in the Azara, Gama Re'iyah Mahakel. We have Gzera Shava. It says in the parasha of Hakel, which the king would read Mishnah Torah, Sefer Devarim, in the Azara after every Shemitah year. Like it says in the Devarim Laman Alf, that was what's called Hakel. All the Jewish people will come and gather and hear from the king Sefer Devarim. The Chsibit says in the pasuk there in Devarim, Hakel is gather the people, the men, the women, and children. And the Chsibit says before that, when all the Jewish people come, leirais to be seen in the Beis Hamikdash. Now there it says leirais. By Re'iyah it says Re'iyah. Oh, just like by Hakel, the halach is going to be exempting any type of a cheresh, even if he's Shemei ben Medaber or Medaber ben Shemei, so too for the mitzvah of Re'iyah. Says Gemara, yeah, but Hasam Noah. How do you know by Hakel that it has the same word as Re'iyah, and that the whoever's a charish of Kolshu, if he's missing just one and not the other, he's not a deaf mute, that he would be exempt? Because the Chsibit says over there by Hakel, it says L'man Yishmu L'man Yilmadu, that they should hear and that they should learn. What does that mean? What they're coming, all the Jewish people are coming that they should hear and they should learn. What are these two concepts? So by the time you learn the Braisa, that it says in the pasuk L'man Yishmu, that they should hear, that exempts someone who could speak but can't hear, which, because it's L'man Yishmu. If you can't hear, then there's no point of having Hakel to come to the Beis Hamikdash. And when it says L'man Yilmadu, that they should learn, that's Prat L'Shemei ve'in Medaber. That exempts someone who could hear or cannot speak. So you see, by Hakel, missing one, either speech or hearing, would exempt you from Hakel. And there it says the word of Leirais. So by Re'iyah, which also is the word that Yiru, that they should Yira. So there also it's going to exempt versus Simcha as a regular mitzvah. Regular mitzvah, someone who could speak but not hear or hear but not speak has das. And therefore is mechuyev in Simcha. They should exempt from Re'iyah because it's comparable to that of Hakel. Problem is, right now, the way the Gemara is making it sounds like that someone who is not able to speak is not able to learn Torah. And that's why you're telling me that a mute person would be exempt from Hakel, and hence exempt from most of the mitzvah of re'iyah. Problem is, says Gemara, remember, is that to say that if a person cannot speak, he can't learn? Because from Laman Yishmu, you're excluding someone who's deaf, and from Laman Yimud, you're exempting someone who's mute. Someone who can't speak, can't learn. But there were these two mute people. They were the neighborhood of Rebbe. They were Bnei Berated Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudguda. They were the sons of the daughter of Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudguda. Or some say it was Bnei Achse Rabbi Yochanan. It was the sons of the sister of Rabbi Yochanan. Either way, whenever Rebbe would come to the Beis Medrash, these two mutes would sit there in front of Rebbe, and they would shake their head, and they would mumble with their lips, but again, they couldn't speak. Rebbe davened for them, he beseeched mercy on them. But he told them they were healed. And it turned out that the Gemiri, that they were learned it in Hilchas and Halachas, V'Sifra and V'Sifri, and all the commentaries in the on the Chumashim, on Torah Shabbat, Kula Shas, all of Shas. So you see that even if someone is mute and can't talk, it could be that they can learn. So how are you excluding from Laman Yilmadu someone who's mute? So Amar Zutri says, no. Kribei, you should read the words, not Laman Yilmadu, but rather Laman Yilamedu. The reason why you should come to Hakel is that you should be able to teach this to others. Someone who's mute can't get up there and give a drusha, can't teach anybody because they're mute. So therefore, that's how we see to exclude a mute person. Not from Laman Yilmadu, because a mute person can learn, but from Laman Yilamedu, so that they should teach. Now Rav Shloimy, he adds more to this. He says, Vadi Laman Yilamedu. In other words, without your question from the two mute people, you're saying, what? Laman Yilmadu is excluding a mute person? How's it possible? A mute person can't learn? We have a story that there was two mute people. No, Rashi is coming to say, forget about the two mute people. It would not be possible to explain the drasha of the Tana that is excluding from here someone who hears but doesn't speak from Laman Yilmadu. It has to be from Laman Yilamedu. He says, why? Because the Isa Gedaydeh would entertain to say, Laman Yilmadu, that's actually where you're going to come in to exclude someone who's mute. Then obviously the Tana holds that that since if he cannot speak, like Gomer, he can't learn for himself. That's what we would have thought. You brought the story of the two mutes, so therefore you rejected that. So forget about the story of two mutes. But shama, if a person can't hear, obviously we could testify that like Gomer, that he can't learn. And since we already learned that Laman Yishmayu, that they should hear, is excluding someone who could speak when they cannot hear, and Anan Sadi, we could testify that the reason why he's excluded is because he's not going to be able to learn anything anyway. He's not going to understand what they're saying because he can't hear. So then the question would be, then why would the pasuk go and repeat itself and say Laman Yilmadu to exclude someone who could hear but cannot speak? Of course, since you're telling me that the reason why the one who cannot speak is being excluded is because he can't learn, so hi Laman Yishmu nafka. I already know this from Laman Yishmu to exclude someone who can't learn. That's the underlying principle you're trying to tell me anyway. Why are we excluding the guy who can't hear? Because he can't understand him. So what's the point? So, and then you tell me, what's Laman Yilmadu coming to exclude? So the guy who can't speak. Why? Because they can't understand him. So what's the point of repeating it? I already know the concept of he can't learn. It's not because hearing or speaking. The primary principle is that you're not going to be able to learn. So why do I need Laman Yilmadu to exclude a mute? Of course I know a mute, even though the Laman Yishma is only on the guy who can't hear. But the whole point of Laman Yishma is because he can't learn. And then obviously Laman Yilmadu, I don't need to have that because I knew the mute wouldn't have to come because he can't learn anyway. Lavada rather says Rav Ashi, obviously, that the Tana holds that the guy who can't talk could learn. And therefore you would not exclude him from Laman Yishmu. Because Laman Yishmu would only exclude someone who can't hear and can't learn, they won't understand anything anyway. So that's why he has to go ahead and repeat and say from Laman Yilamedu, to say most definitely that what we're expounding is not Laman Yilmadu, it has to be Laman Yilamedu. Not because, forget about even if I couldn't prove that someone who is mute that could learn, maybe even if he can't learn, but I wouldn't need you to exclude it then from Laman Yilmadu. I would know it already from Laman Yishmu, obviously that a mute guy could learn, and I need Laman Yilamedu to exclude him because he cannot teach, that I wouldn't know. Maybe someone who could learn but can't teach would be Mechuyim. No, I need Laman Yilamedu that so that he should teach, to exclude someone who cannot teach, which is a mute person because he can't go ahead and speak and give that over to other people. Now, additionally, going back to this Gezerah Shabbat, we had compared the mitzvah of Re'iyah to the mitzvah of hakel. The reason why we did that because we wanted to explain what we were discussing in the previous daf, that we said that only a cheresh that's a deaf mute is exempt from simcha. But a cheresh who just can't talk or can't hear, he's going to be exempt from the mitzvah of re'iyah because we compared to hakel, which we just learned from where we know that from Laman Yishma, Laman Yilameidu. So based on that same Gzera Shalom, he says, cheresh ba'oznei achas. If someone's deaf in only one ear, patim re'iyah, he's exempt from appearing in the azar. Why? Because Shneimah says in the pasuk Devarim, by hakel, it says ba'ozneihem, in their ears, they should hear it, which means they have to be able to hear it in both ears. And we compare re'iyah to hakel. Just like hakel, deaf in one ear would exempt, so to re'iyah would also exempt. Says the Gemara, wait a second, hi buzz name in Boyle, that buzz name you need for something else. To tell you buzz name the Kuli Yisrael, the plural is not on the individual's two ears, the plural is on all of the Jewish people to hear. How do you know he has to be able to hear with two ears and not with one ear? Says Gemara, no, hahu, that it has to be the whole Jewish people hearing is Meneged Kol Yisrael Nafka. That we know from different pasuk, from that it should be from that in that same pasuk, but where the words say Kol Yisrael. I already know the plural of all the Jewish people, the word Kol. Obviously, Ozneihem is going on each individual's two ears. Says Gemara, no. If all I had was that it should be directed towards the whole of the Jewish people, I would have said that Avgav Shami, even though they don't hear, which, as Taisa points out, meaning I would say that even if they don't hear because they're very far away, obviously if they're deaf, we would exclude them from Bazneihem. But if I only had Kol Yisrael, so then I would think that, yeah, but they don't have to hear it. Therefore, I had to write in their ears that that they should hear, but it's going on the plural, the ears of the Jewish people, that they should have to hear it, but not on each individual. How do you know that a person has to hear with two ears, and if he's deaf in one ear, he's exempt? Says no, it's not true. That we learn out from Laman Yishma that they should hear. So I know that they should hear. So what only Baz Nehem? They should hear is going on Kol Yisrael. So I already know the plural of all the Jewish people are hearing. So what's Ba'az Nehem must be every individual's two ears. If he's deaf in one ear, he's exempt from Hakel and he's exempt from the mitzvah of Re'iyah. Now, a similar type of a drasha, again from Abram Tacham, says Chagigah b'ragle achas. We spoke about deaf in one ear. Let's someone's lame in one foot. He has one bad foot. So Patim and Re'iyah are also exempt from Re'iyah. Because Shneimah says the pasuk in Shemais says Shalish Yigolim Tachig Li Bashana, which we usually translate as Tuyam Taivim, you should celebrate for me. But the word Regalim is also regel, and it's in the plural. You have to come up with midbay the feet. You have to go with both feet. Says Gemara, what do you mean? But you need regalim to teach you something else, to teach you a more severe foot ailment. That prat labali kavod. It's coming to exclude someone who they have these wooden feet. And they would cut off their feet, they would amputate it, they would put this like small block at the end of his thigh, and they would put like these cushions, and he would lean his thigh on that. That's a guy who we're excluding from regalim. But not a guy who he has a foot, it's just lame. That's a pretty lame drasha compared to that of Bali Kavin. Bali Kavin has no feet at all, so we can exclude him, but to exclude a lame person, who said you could learn it out from regalim? Says, well, no, we have another pasuk. That we learn now, that of the Bali Kavin, from a pasuk that says in Shemais, Sholish pa'amim b'ashana, 3 times in the year, Yid'ol kol zuchurcha b'nei Adon Hashem, all your males should see by the face of the Master Hashem, which the Tanya learned in the Brisa. Pa'amim, also, it's interesting, not just means times, but ain't pa'am el regalim. Pa'am also means feet. And therefore, again, it would mean someone who has feet, excluding a Bali Kavin who doesn't have feet, and therefore Shalosh Regalim could be used, the guy who has the capacity of both his feet, which that means he's not lame in both feet, because Regalim is in the plural. Because V'cheinu Emes says the pasuk in Yeshaya, it says, Tirmesen Ragel, trampled by the feet, Ragli on the feet of the pauper, Pa'amei Dalim, the soles of the poor. So you see the Pa'amim means feet. So Tuvam is a pasuk in Shir Hashem that says, Mayofu Pa'mayech Ban Olam. How beautiful are your soles in your feet, which obviously that it's those who have shoes have pa'amim, which refers to feet. Now, by Re'iyah, it says, Sholish pa'amim b'ashana yero kol zechurcha. So therefore, again, from pa'amim, we would exclude this, that a guy who doesn't have feet. And regalim excludes that who is lame. Bas Nadiv, the pasuk there ends, the daughter of the noble one. So again, therefore we have 2 psukim, one to exclude Bali Kavin, one to exclude that of the feet, and therefore you have to be able to walk with both feet, and if lame on one foot, it would be excluded. Now, based on the same pasuk, Darish Rava, he gives a homiletic, agadic teaching. It says, Ma'idach said, what does it mean in the pasuk? Mayafu pa'mayach, how beautiful are your feet, Bas Na'olam in the shoes, Bas Nadiv, the daughter of the noble ones. So in the Drush, it's like this. Kamanoin raglein shel Yisrael. How beautiful are the feet of the Jewish people. Again, mayofu palmayach, we said, it means feet. B'shosha oilen l'regel, but olam could also mean the word of oilen, when they're going up to the regel, of the Yom Tov. Bas Nadiv, the Jewish people are called the daughter of the Nadiv. Who's that? Bita shel Avram Avinu. We're the daughter of Avram Avinu, shenikra Nadiv. Why is it called Nadiv? Rashi tells us because he was menadiv as liboy. He donated his heart to recognize his creator. Which is interesting because people know intellectually, but you have to really give over your heart, your emotions, your desires, to recognize and to admit that there is a creator, and that's what Avram Avinu did. So he's called Nadiv, and we're the bas of that. Like it says a pasuk in Tehillim. It says Nedivei Amim, those who donate from the nations, meaning that's referring to the Gerim, that they're the ones who give over themselves from the nations to accept the yoke of the mitzvahs. Nes will gather to Amalek Avram, to the people of the God of Avram. Oh, what do you mean? We're the people of the God of Avram. Why Gerim only coming to the Amalek Avram? Like Avram, like Yitzchak, Yaakov. What do you mean? Aren't we also? He's the God of Avram, Isaac, and Jacob. No, Ella. The reason why we're saying over there like Avram to the God of Avram is Gerim, because he was the first of all the Gerim. Like we said, he was Nediv Leiv, and therefore, when we talk about Gerim over there, which is Nediv Amim, we refer to Avram Avinu. He's the first of Gerim, like Tesa says that he was commanded on Milah more than all those who came before him, and therefore that's how you become a Ger. And that was Avram Avinu, and therefore that's what it means in the pasuk of Bas Nadiv, which referring to Klai, so it's the daughter of Avram Avinu. Now, because we mentioned a Jerush from Tanchem, so we bring over here other teaching from Tanchem, although it's really seemingly unrelated. Amar of Kahana, a well-known drasha, Darsha Abnasan Baminyumi B'Shum Reb Tanchem. My said was in the pasuk in Bereshis that it says that they took Yosef and they threw him into the pit, and it said V'aboy and the pit was empty. Ein b'y mayim, there was no water. Now, from the fact that it says V'aboy the pit was empty. Any day Shemamam don't know there's no water. Does haste empty? Empty means no water. Now, rather mayim and boy, yeah, there was no water in there. Yes, but with snakes and scorpions there were over there, and it was only empty from water. Going back to the mitzvah of Hakel and related to that of the Yom Tov, talking about one of Brisa. They went to accept the countenance of Rabbi Yeshua in Pekin, meaning it was a Yom Tov, that everyone has to honor their Rebbe in receiving his countenance and greeting him, like the verse says in Rosh Hashanah Tezayim Beis, that why are you going today? It says on Melachim Beis, it's not Chodesh V'lei Shabbos, which you see that on Chodesh and Shabbos and Yom Tov you're supposed to greet the Rebbe. So they came to Rabbi Yeshua in Pekin. Amalem, he said to them, what was something new that you learned today in the Beis Medrash? They said to him, we're your students. We can't speak in front of you. We drink your orders. You know, you're asking us, we learned the Beis Medrash, you're the Rebbe. So Amalem said to them, even so, a well-known phrase, it's not possible that you can have a study hall without something new, something novel. Shabbos Shal Mihai. They asked him, whose Shabbos was it? Because at a certain time in history, when they took away Rebbe Malil and they put Rebbe Elazar ben Zariah in his place, it made a big tumult, and then they took back Rebbe Malil, but they ended up keeping Rebbe Elazar ben Zariah once every 4 weeks, so it would switch off 3 weeks from Malil, 1 week Rebbe Elazar ben Zariah. So Vayman's Vach is Gevein, the Drusha, der Vach. Since Shabbos Rebbe Elazar ben Zariah, it was Rebbe Elazar ben Zariah's week to give the Drusha. But what was this Agadic teaching? The Rub gets up, he has to something homiletic to draw in the Olam and make it interesting. So Amalei said to him, Parshas Hakel. Talk about the Parsha of Hakel, which is about this mitzvah that we discussed before, about gathering all the people every 7 years. And what did he expound? So it says in the pasuk in the bottom, Hakel gather the people on Noshim, the men, the women, and the children. Now, Ima Noshim Boim Lamet. So Elazar ben asked like this: if the men are coming to learn, Noshim Bois L'Shemai, the women are coming to hear, which Tais actually brings from the Yerushalmi, that this is obviously not like Ben Azai, who says you have to teach your daughter Torah, which she has to be an educated and learn Talmud just like the men are. Obviously, it's not going like that. It's famous Drasha because, and they should say, women also coming to learn. No, they come to listen, not coming to learn. So, but Tavlam about why the little children coming? To give reward for those who bring them. And Taisus brings, and this is what people rely on when they bring the children to the shul. What are you bringing kids to shul? They're making machta gerida, what do you bring kids? It's the same thing. to give reward to those who bring them, because we want to bring them to a holy place, we want to bring them to a big Mara, Hagod Hazeh, and that's why we bring the children to Hakel. So on that, Rabbi Shua said to them, such a pearl you had in your hands, you wanted to lose this from me, you didn't want to tell me what to learn. So they got excited. Says, okay, they're going on. They can give him the whole drusha. Shabbos drusha in this shul is 45 minutes, right? So there's a lot more to say. It says passing the Devarim. It says es Hashem hamarta hayom. The word hamarta means like shibachta. Like we have a pasuk in Tehillim, Yisamru kol poyel li'oven. That means they're going to praise that their way is going to be successful. So it means as Hashem that Hashem you praise today. Hashem and Hashem praised you today. What does this mean? So I'm like Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to the Jewish people, you made me one piece, one praise, a distinct praise in this world. Like we say, in Kamoicha, there's no one like you, and therefore we chose you as a God. So Hashem says, I'm going to make you one choice praise in this world. What does this mean? So you made me, says Hashem to the Jewish people, one chunk, one praise in the world. Just like says the pasuk in Devarim. Shema Yisrael, hear Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem is a God, Hashem Echad, Hashem is one. One praise. The world is only, this God is the only thing. I'm going to also make you one piece of praise in this world. Hashem says the pasuk in Devarim Aleph. If you think on the base, who's like your people, the Jews? Goy Echad Ba'aretz. One nation on the world. Which is, again, this thing about the unity. Just like God is the only one, so to the Jewish people, which actually Tais brings interesting from the Medrash, that there are three that testify on each other. Yisrael, Shabbos, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Jewish people on HaKadosh Baruch Hu testify on Shabbos that it's a day of Menucha. The Jewish people on Shabbos testify on HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He's one. HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Shabbos testify on the Jewish people that they're the only ones from the nations. And that, says Tais, is what we rely on when we say Ata Echad, by Mincha b'Shabbos, even though it's not talking about, seemingly about Shabbos, in contrast to Ma'ariv and Shachris, so what we say, At Echad, b'Shimcha Echad, where does this come in? Because that is the concept that Shabbos and Hashem and the Jewish people are all saying that it's the unique one, and that's why we say it on Shabbos. Now, the Afhu, and then they continued, and they said, also Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Pasach b'Dar, she opened up and he gave another drasha on this week. He said, in Pasach in Kehelis, the words of the sages, kidurvonis, are like goats. These are pointy, like rods they would use to prod the animals. And like planted nails. Very interesting image. Like planted nails. Bali Asufis, the men of the assemblies, it was given from one shepherd. Okay, so he expounded this pasuk, a very interesting pasuk, actually a very powerful pasuk for people who get fed up from learning Gemara and from the words of the Chacham. He says, what is lamachop? So interesting, listen to what the Gemara, how it teaches the pasuk. It says, Lama nimshal dibri Torah darvin. Why are the words of Torah compared to an ox goad? Lemlecha, to tell you, ma darvin says, just like the goad, this rod. It focuses the cow to its furrows, to the road that it's furrowing. Now, the words of Torah does the same thing, which is we're doing our job, but we can get off. The words of Torah direct us to do the job that we want to be doing, but we get off. So that's what the darvin does, and that's what the words of Torah does. And what does that do? To bring life to the world, because when you're plowing, you're creating the platform for fostering growth. That's what the ox goad does. After very tired, so to the words of Torah, it focuses those who learn it, from the path of death to the path of life. Now, but he continues. But if you're going to compare the words of Torah only to Darvin, that's the uniqueness and the multidimensionality of Torah, where it can't be only unilaterally one and not the other, because then you have the limitations of one. So if you compare it just to the Darvin, it's metaltal, but that's movable. You would say after return metal. So in the words of Torah, it's movable. Okay, you can make it this, make it that. It doesn't have the absolute values for eternity. No, that's what the pasuk Tamalim continues as mas moris. In other words, you would say that it won't last. No, it's nails. Nails is something that it remains where it is, and it's immovable, and it's immutable. And that's the words of Torah. Now, wait a second. But if you're comparing it to nails, when you knock a nail into a wall, so then chaser v'lo yaser. So then what it does is it creates a loss because it makes a hole in the wall. So you would think to say, okay, after return chaser v'lo yaser. So then the word of Torah, it rips away from you, and people have this impression about Torah and Jewish life that it's you have to cut out all the joys and all the pleasure in life. It rips out pieces of you to knock it into you. Tam 11:2, and it says no, it's planting. It's such a beautiful metaphor. Mana to Yezu, just like this planting. Part of it over. It's not like you're digging out and you're plowing and you're putting in, you're taking space with the seed. To the contrary, this is fruitful, multiplies. It makes this magnificent tree and bush that's coming out. After return part of it over, and some of the words of Torah, these nails are planted. They're firm, but these are things that will proliferate and will create a bounty in your life. And then it continues, Bali Asufas, the men of the assembly. What is that referring to? It's El Tamid Chacham. This refers to the Talmudic scholars. Sheyishmin Asufas. They sit in chaburas, in groups, and they learn the Torah. Now, this is actually something that people struggle with, that halalu mitamen, v'halalu mitara. Okay, so these rabbis are saying it's tamei. These rabbis are saying it's tar. Halalu eisim, these rabbis say it's forbidden. Halalu matir, these rabbis say it's permitted. Halalu paisim, these rabbis say that it's invalid, which you could say the word invalid, let's say pasal for edus or pasal for guna. Halalu machshin, these rabbis saying it's kasha. So people say, come on, do me a favor. Shemi, maybe a person is going to say, hey, chani lemitar mata, how am I going to learn Torah now? Like, come on. I mean, this rabbi says good, this rabbi says bad. This is how people have it. So that's the pasuk coming to Bavarin. Tam 11, it's actually an amazing insight, the way the pasuk addresses it. Kulam nit numerai echad. What does the pasuk mean when it says it was given from one shepherd? Kel echad nasnan. One God gave it, and as Rashi says beautifully, he says, no one in that dispute is bringing proof from any other religion or dogma, but from the Torah of our own God. Think about it for a second. When someone is saying a shtickle Torah, he's not coming from anywhere else. Parnas Echadamar, one leader said it. He's not bringing a right from any other prophet that's coming to disagree with the prophets of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's from Pi Adon Kol Hamasan Baruch Hu. It's from the mouth of the master of all the actions, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because it says in Shemait, Elikim, God spoke as Kol Hadvar Me'ela. Kol is plural already. So what's Hadvarim? Because it's saying everything everyone is saying, they're all coming from the same words of Torah. So when that you're becoming disillusioned, it's not because anyone is disagreeing with the premises. Everyone agrees with the same Torah Shabbat. People don't realize how much we all agree on. It's just the applications that we're having different of interpretations of that. But that's not a difficulty. And now, from the fact that their intent are for the same purpose of Lashamayim, you should also make your ears to listen and to learn and to know all the words of the sages. And when you learn to differentiate which one is the most appropriate one to establish the halacha like him, then you'll know. But you should make your ears kafar cheses, like a mill hopper, which is like the funnel that's on the mill. Open up. Your ears listen, and acquire for yourself a discerning heart. The Shemaya to listen, yes, as Devi Betamim, as Devi Matarim. Those who are saying it's Talmud, those who are saying it's Torah. As Devi Isur, as Devi Matim, those who are saying that it's forbidden, those who are saying that it's mutter. As Devi Plazim, as Devi Mashim, those who say it's Paul's, those who say it's kosher. And then you'll look it through, you'll work it through, and then you'll figure out, okay, which is the most appropriate for us to follow. But it's not like that they're saying different things is like coming from different places. It's all from the same place. It's just, okay, so which one is the most appropriate definition of this halachic application? That's what Rabbi Nazariah darshan. And this word Rabbi Shua said to them, Ein dar yasam. There's no generation that's orphaned. Rabbi Nazariah is dwelling amongst them. What a beautiful interpretation to understand the words of Torah. Now, the Gemara goes back to the beginning of the story, that when he asked them, he says, you're our Rebbe, what can we say? Says the Gemara, why didn't they say him straight out immediately? Why did they have to say, we're your students, and what can we say? Says Gemara, the reason why they did it was because actually it was a story that happened that had drastic consequence, and they were afraid of that. The time we learned the Brisa. in Damascus. He went to receive the countenance, the face of Lasa and Lud. He said to them the same question. What was anything novel that was taught today in the Beis HaMedrash? So Amalei, he said to him, Nimnu v'gamru. They made a count and they concluded and they instituted that Am and Nemayav, which the way Rashi says, the Jews who dwell in Transjordan, the part of that they conquered from Sichon and Og, which is the lands of Am and Nemayav, they are ma'asr. In today's times, they take meiser of meiser ani b'shvius of the poor man's tithe in the Shemitah year, which generally the way it goes is the first 2 years meiser ani and meiser sheni, which that second tithe you go and you eat in Yerushalayim. The third and the sixth year you had to take off meiser ani. Now in the Shemitah year there's never any meisers because everything is hefker. But in Am and Moav they would plant in the Shemitah year because as the Gemara is going to shortly tell us that when they came back after Golas Bavel to build the second base of Mikdash, they did not re-sanctify those lands like the Kedushas of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, the Chacham instituted that, okay, they don't have the halacha of Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, they're allowed to plant, they don't have a halacha of Shemitah, but when they let them take off rabbinically the Meiser Ani in the Shemitah year. So Rabbi Lezer said to him, Yaisi, Pasha Yedecha, stretch out your hands, V'kabala Nechem, receive your eyes. Basically like, take your eyesight, and you're going to lose it. Why? Because it was it was bothersome to him that he was like crowning the one who gave this drasha, that like as if this was a great insight to whoever it was that came up with this idea. But this is from the days of Anshe Knesset Gdeva. It's like, what is this? What's the generation coming to? So Pasha Yada B'Kibul Einam. So he stretched out his hand and like he received his eyes. I don't know what actually happened, if the eyes were in his hand or whatever happened, but basically he lost his eyesight. Rabbi Lezer cried and he said a pasuk in Tehillim, Soid Hashem Lireya. The secret of God is to those who fear Him. Uverisa in His covenants, Leidim, is to let them know, which Amalei said to him, Leichem, go tell them, don't be afraid of your accounting, meaning don't be concerned and start wondering maybe what you did if it was appropriate or not, because you guys actually got to the actual appropriate halacha. Because this is a tradition I got from Yechim and Zakkai. Shlomo ben Abba, who heard from his teacher, but Abba ben Abba, his teacher from his teacher, going all the way back, that Am and Moav, those lands, that they take off the poor man's tithe in the Shemitah year. Now, Matam, what's actually the reason for that? Because there were many cities that were conquered by those who came up from Egypt in the times of Moshe and Yeshua and coming to the first base of Mikdash. But then when they came back from Bavel after the Gullus, coming back for the second base of Mikdash in the days of Ezra, those who came back from Bavel did not conquer them. Why? Because in the first sanctity that Yeshua ben Nun made of Eretz Yisrael, that kitchel l'shaita, that was only for the moment, for temporary that it was sanctified. It was not sanctified for all future times. But the second sanctity, when they came back from Bavel, that was an eternal sanctity, as a Brisa teaching in Bamaz that the first Yerusha and the second one they have, but the third one is no third Yerusha, because the second one is forever. So therefore, the rest of Eretz Yisrael, you obviously cannot plant in the seventh year because it's Shemitah. But Am and Moav, they left them not to sanctify them, to leave them non-Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, so that the paupers have what to rely on in the seventh year, because they get leket, and they get shikha, and they get peyah, and meiser ani. So therefore they instituted that they should take a meiser ani. And this was with the consent of the Chachamim, so that because they were able to make whatever meiser they wanted to, because there's no biblical obligation anywhere, because it's not Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. They made, let it be meiser ani, we'll leave it for that. We won't reconquer it, we won't sanctify it, we'll leave it for that. And therefore he says that this, what they said, is not their own chiddush. Don't be worried about it, because this actually was from the days of it's from Halach Moshe Messina. So we learned the Brisa, the La'achar Shel Nesiyash V'daita, after Blazer calmed down, he said, maybe the will that the eyes of Yesi go back to the place. And they went back, I said, but that's why they were afraid when he was asking them, not such a simple question, because you might lose your eyesight, and therefore they're like, we're your students, we don't know anything, you know, you tell us, right? And he says, no, and that's why they said it, they didn't say it right away. Now, going back to the halach of the Mishnah, we had mentioned Hakol Chayom B'Re'iyah, and we said Chutz Micheresh, who we discussed already. We spoke about the Cheresh, Medab ben Shemei, Shemei ben Medab is exempt from Re'iyah, and this that we compared to Shaita B'Katan is only that on the exemption of Simcha. And then the next one was Shaita. So a mentally deranged person is also exempt from the mitzvah of Re'iyah. So now, turn about on the Brisa, that Ezer was Shaita. Who is a fool, who is imbecilic, who's mentally retarded, that said in old places that he's exempt from mitzvahs and from punishments, and his acquisitions are not considered acquisition, his sale is not a sale, who's considered a shaykh? So, says the Brisa, if someone goes out at nighttime by himself, someone sleeps in the cemetery at nighttime, and he tears his garments. So we actually have machlekes how to qualify this Brisa. Itmar we learned, Rav Huna, he says, until you have all three of these at the same time, he says, no, any one of these three would make a person a shaita to have this halach. So the Gemara wonders about this machlekes and says, wait a second, hey chidami, what's the case talking about? If you did it in a mentally deranged way, then even one should be considered as a shaita according to everyone. And sometimes you have to go out at nighttime, right? This is an important thing. You're running somewhere. Oh, shaita is going out at nighttime. You didn't do it through a derech shtus. So even if all of them you're doing, should also. Guy was locked in by the cemetery. He went to the thing, and then the unions come and they lock the cemetery. That happens, and he's stuck there. And he sleeping there at nighttime. Shaita. Sometimes. So even if you do all three of them, and he tears his garments because he had a reason to, because he had something stuck over there, whatever it is. So even if you do all three, so how do you understand the machlekes? If he did a derech shtus, everyone should agree one should be enough. If he didn't do a derech shtus, he didn't do all three. So this is Gemara, no. We're talking about where he did it in the mentally deranged type of a way. And even so, that man, the Amr, held that we're not going to presume to be a shaykh if he does one of them. You know why? Because each one, if you only do one, even though it's in a way of shtus, that won't prove, it won't indicate, it won't ascertain that you're for sure a shaykh. Because, let's say the one about sleeping in the cemetery. Amy, you could say, he's doing it because he wants that impure spirit should take a hold of him, which is the spirit of the demons, that they could help him to do some type of a sorcery. So even though it's a way of shtus, he didn't have to, wasn't locked in the cemetery, but that won't prove that he's a shaykh. So if he's going out at nighttime alone, Amy, you could say gandrifa zachade, which either that means to say that it's a type of a illness that grabs a hold of a person because of worry. Sounds something like either a panic attack, or it sounds like some type of more like a psychosis or something like that. Or Rashi says what he prefers is that actually a person's body gets heated up and he has to go out and get some fresh air. But either way, a guy's running outside and he's like, what's going on over here? He's not, I'm not mentally deranged, I gotta get out. And saying this is right. So, and Vamakriyas Kisusa, and someone tears his garments, in Bamachshabasu, you can say someone that's, however you could say Bamachshabas is a tracht, or he's possessed by his thoughts. But it doesn't necessarily mean he's like tearing his garments, I can't take it, rips it off, whatever. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's a shaita. So that's the machlekes. One manama says yes, doing one of the three a derech shtus is going to make it. The other one says no, it's not muchaf, because it could be, you could find other reasons why he would do it. Now, but keeping up din l'kula, that manama holds, but if you do all three of them, okay, then havalu, that's like as we continue to have a dalm and alf, kami, shenagach shur, chamar begamal. This is like as we'll see in Baba Kamen of Lanzayim and Aleph, that if you have an ox that gores one time an ox, one time a donkey, one time a camel, then you become a mu'id for goring all types of creatures. And that is, we don't say that, no, you only become a mu'id, which is a chazak of doing it 3 times, when you do it every single species. No, since he's become established that he gored 3 different types, obviously he's not particular about a different type. So it will be here that if you did these 3 things, you're not going to say each one for a different reason. You're going to say that it must be because of the sum total, which it must be a shaita. And that's why he's doing it. Just like when the ox gores all these 3 types, you don't say, oh, this, that. No, you'd say 3 types of all different types. That's going to make you a mood lakol. So to over here, it must be a shaita lakol. Now, Amar Papa says, Ishmili Rav Huna. If Rav Huna, who he's the one that says that you need to have all of them to make yourself into a shaita, had he heard the time that this, in the Bryce that says shaita was considered a shaita, Zama Abed Kamashanaisim, like this is someone who throws away all that you give him, which sounds like even in one area we consider him a shaita. If he would have heard that Bryce, he would have retracted, he would have agreed that you don't need to have all 3 to be a shaita. Now, Eboilu did the following question. Kiyava Hadarbe, when you tell me he would have retracted, is that only Mimikurdei Kasusu who have a Hadarbe? Is it only regarding that element of tearing his garment that he would have retracted? Because the Damalu, that's very similar to ruining what you give him, which is his clothing. Maybe he would have retracted from them all. Like Tosfos explains, do we say that since the tearing is similar to the case of Ma'abed Mashanoisim Loi, that's what he was retracting, and therefore, he would be retracting from the others, or maybe no, only from this one itself. Take a look. It's not clear when you're saying that he would have retracted because you see one is enough, and therefore he would have retracted, or maybe only from this one he would have retracted. Says no, this one type alone is enough because it's like, what are you doing? Like when someone gives you something and you just ruin it. That's similar to what the Bryce says. Maybe the other ones, no. Maybe just being lumd base akvaras and going Yitzchak Balayla, those individually would not be enough. That's the question that take a stand. It's not clear what he would have retracted from all of them, or only from that one. Thank you to any time, boss.